how long does it take to get a payout?
It takes like a week.
It takes like a week to get your money.
Where you're floating that.
Yes. So if you're used to getting paid out with just normal Shopify, you're losing cash flow of almost 7 days. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Decoding Cross-Border Ecommerce podcast. And today we promised we'd bring back a guest, and we're bringing back Kilie to talk about more about Shopify. But this time we're going to talk about selling internationally on Shopify. What are your options? What are some of the the trade-offs depending on what you choose? And but you came with the joke last time.
I did.
And now that we're talking about international, I'm hoping that Aaron, who's the king of dad jokes, has something for us.
Oh, I don't know if I have a joke. It's just a story about a friend of mine who's born in Italy, and I needed to get him a gift. His name's Dr. Frankenstein, and the gift I got him was a gym membership.
Oh, why?
That guy is really into bodybuilding.
All right, this is kicking off really good here. Okay, so let's break this conversation about selling internationally on Shopify, I think, into 3 areas. Aaron, you were talking about this earlier. What are kind of the 3 areas you see that your choices are on Shopify?
Yeah, so when I start as we talked about before, I'm working on my family business to compete with yours.
Right.
So I'm going to start my Shopify store and enlist all my free labor with my kids to dominate the space. But as I decide to go global with it, I've got to look at all my options. And really, when I look at Shopify, I can compartmentalize it into, they have the Shopify Markets, Managed Markets, or you can go third-party apps. And that's kind of how I boil it down. I am not a Shopify expert, which is why I'm glad we have Kilie here to really understand each one of those. But I think that would help guide our conversation of like, okay, Managed Markets, what is that? And help me understand you got markets, managed markets, and third-party apps, and understanding each one of those a little deeper would be helpful for me.
And I think maybe before we jump to those 3, because when you say go international, you can sell internationally on Shopify right now without doing any of those 3 things.
True. This is true.
So you can use markets, but you don't have to use like the a la carte options for...
But you don't have to use markets.
You could just go...
Right? You just use USD and do DDU, correct?
Yeah, you could.
Meaning duties and taxes unpaid.
I guess there's 4 buckets then, isn't there?
Yeah, that's the old school, and a lot of companies still do the old school piece.
Absolutely.
Which is, hey, let's talk about that and the benefits of that. What are the benefits? And we know there's lots of cons. We talk about those on pretty much every episode. But what are the benefits of not doing DDP? If you're a merchant, what are the reasons? Like what? Obviously, there's some benefits because people are choosing to do it. They say, look, I'm going to do DDU and let my shopper pay the duties and taxes. What do you think?
I think it's a lot easier to get conversion because you don't have those extra costs in the checkout.
Okay, so the price of the checkout's less. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And some people they'll accept sometimes that there's extra costs because at that point their item is already there. So it might take a hit on like repeat business, but for that initial sale.
Even if the shopper's informed, they might be willing to take a gamble that maybe I won't get hit with duty and tax.
Yeah.
Okay. What liability, right? Like there's a whole liability shift there, like less complication for you as a merchant.
Right. You're just shifting that complication.
I'm not going to deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you see. And you see so many terms and conditions that out here that are kind of the old school ones of like, hey, there's probably going to be duty and tax due. That's on you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Which, so for the merchant, I think simplicity of like, look, I'm just going to treat this like a domestic shipment. I'm going to give it to the carrier and all the problems are going to be on you as a shopper. But the dynamics of that have changed a little bit with some of these tax laws that are starting to push the burden onto the seller. So you can't quite take that blanket approach anymore. You have to be aware of some of the tax laws that we've talked about on some of the other podcasts. But yeah, I think the lower cost at checkout and the pushing the burden onto your shopper, but that might get a few, and might help with conversion, maybe get some initial sales, but the long-term health of your customer relationship, I think is damaged.
If your business is if you don't have a lot of repeat customers, then
Sure.
okay, maybe, is it ethical? I mean, I wouldn't say it's unethical, but it's not, you're definitely not helping the shopper out when you're not informing them of those things. So I'm convinced I want to go international too. So let's talk about those 3 options. When I say international, now I want to go do it right. I want duties and taxes, and that's where our 3 options kind of come in. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So let's start with that. Let's start with the first. I think we do third-party apps last. Let's talk about markets, managed markets, and then apps.
Okay.
What is the difference between? Actually, no. First, just tell us what is markets.
Yeah, markets is actually the functionality. So if you're wanting to sell internationally, then you would set up different markets for each area that you're wanting to sell to. So you could have a domestic market, and then you could group all of the EU countries together into an EU market, and then you could have a separate market for Australia and Canada. You can group them however you want, but it's basically for this region that you're selling to, how do you want to change things for that region? And there are a number of things that you can change. So you can change like the products within that market. So if you're wanting to restrict items, certain items can't go to Canada or to the EU. You can do that through markets. It'll pull in all of your products, and then you can choose which ones not to sell to that region. Or you can change the prices entirely. So if
on the products one, so if I had it set up to Australia to not sell a certain sneaker to Australia, if an Australian shopper came to my site, would they even see the sneaker at all?
they would not even see it at all.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, which is the best experience for them, because who wants to add something to their cart and then not get to do it? So yeah, you can restrict certain products from different areas, different regions, and then you can also change the product prices. You can do that either through like a global 10% increase if you wanted to, or you could do that specifically for certain products. And that may be advantageous if you for a certain brand, if it's not allowed to be sold under a certain amount in a country, then you can make sure that you have those things adapted. Different ways to localize basically to that region. And then you can control whether it's in the localized currency, so the currency of the shopper, or you can choose to keep it in your store's currency.
So you can use markets and just be on your own store's currency, like in US, just have it in USD, or if you're in Canada, just Canadian dollar.
You can. I mean, that's a lot more comfortable sometimes for the merchant, but as a shopper, it's not a great experience. I don't really want to buy something else in AUD.
Yeah, I mean, for the merchant, once you enable the currency conversion, you're now on the hook for the risk on the FX a little bit, right? So they'll mark it up to try to, but it's not perfectly exact like the amount that you're going to get back. Is that accurate?
The currency conversion, if you choose to have it in their localized currency, then Shopify will take care of that, but it's a la carte. It's 1.5%.
But they take care of it for the shopper. But on our store, because we do it, the currency conversion coming back is just what the currency conversion is coming back.
So that means the amount.
So what if I had sold it in USD, I might have sold it for $100 in total.
But if you sell it in other currencies,
I might end up getting 99, or it's just not it's not perfect, because they just take the final amount and just have a conversion rate back to USD.
Right. So the amount you get as a merchant is going to be variable.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably not losing a lot here, but it's just for bookkeeping and things like that. It might be something to be aware of.
Yeah. And it does cost a little bit as well.
Right.
For that.
Right. How much does it cost?
It's 1.5% if you're doing it this a la carte way.
Okay.
Rather than through like managed markets, which we'll talk about.
All right.
Later.
Yeah. No, it's interesting how markets. I like how you framed it, that it's more like it's a feature than it is like a product.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now I want duty and tax. So how does this work inside of markets?
Yeah. So you can do like a duty and tax estimation. Again, kind of that a la carte option is 0.85%. And that just basically has them calculate what the duties and taxes would be and collect it at checkout for you. But it's not guaranteed, so there can be fluctuations. There typically is whenever you're talking about that kind of a thing. And it won't include fees either. It's just going to be duties and taxes.
I want to walk through the practical use of this. If I'm a shipper, I've got my store. I say I've got the option. I can pay a little extra to convert everything to my shopper's currency and localize that experience. And I say, I'm getting a lot of upset customers because of duty and taxes. I want to collect that up at checkout now so that everything's transparent. I turn it on. I'm collecting the money, but then when I go to fulfill, at that point, that's when I actually have to make sure I'm also sending it DDP, right?
Right.
And then I'm going to have to manage on my own. The bills that are coming back may or may not match the amount I collected. And so I've got to watch that. And then I'm also on my own to figure out how to remit taxes on any of these low value tax schemes.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So it's there's a lot of ownership on your side,
right?
If you're going to choose markets.
It's still helpful to have a calculation over nothing, but it's just a duty and tax tool. It's like if I'm shipping with a carrier that has extra fees, it's not going to count for that.
I mean,
Right. Yep.
You're going to have to get a UK VAT number because it's going to be required to the UK. So like either, it's, you can opt to do the IOS piece, but now that you have a UK VAT number, now you got to track your sales and you have to do the remittance, and it's a lot of work. I think, one of the other challenges with markets goes back to the challenges we talked about Shopify in the episode just on Shopify in general, which is shipping calculations internationally are extremely important. I mean, if you're just doing apparel, no dimensional weight or something like that, you're probably fine. But internationally, dimensional weight is super important. And Shopify does not support dimensional weight calculations with the express carrier connection. So when the rates are coming back from the carrier, if this box is big, you are going to possibly lose a lot of money on shipping. And then you have to do just crazy things to try to make up your margin and not lose money. And it's hard to manage.
Okay, we make this statement, but I want to take 30 seconds to explain why it's dimensional weight is so much more important internationally than domestic. It's very important domestic, and I think everybody's probably dealing with that. But internationally, you've got two things working against you. One, the incremental change from pound to pound, let's say, or whatever.
The pricing change.
The pricing change.
Yeah.
Is much more drastic internationally. So, if you rate something at £5 and it turns out getting billed at £10, there's going to be huge discrepancy.
Not a $2 difference. There might be a
$10 difference. Right? Like who knows what it can be. It can be pretty drastic. But then on top of that, the dim factor that's used is often much lower, which means that same box might dim out to be £10 domestically, and you ship it internationally, it might dim out to be 13, 14,
domestic
15
dim factor is usually 166, right?
Mm-hmm. And 139 is international. Yeah.
So that kind of, it's like a compounding problem that you can lose a lot of money.
Yeah. So you can get way off really fast internationally versus domestic's a little more stable.
Yeah. So you could pay for a third-party app, right, to help do shipping calculations. Mm-hmm. And to help out with that dimensional weight piece. And then you're on top of that, you're paying, how much are you paying again for it's 0.85%?
0.85%.
For the duty and tax calculation. Now you have the cost, you have compliance cost, because you now have to do UK VAT. So you have compliance costs on top of that. So, and then the biggest cost, I think is the most important, is this is an estimate of duty and tax. Period. There's no, like you said, there's not fees, meaning carrier fees. And I would highly recommend that anyone listening to this that's like, what is he talking about? Go listen to our episode on carrier fees, because we had a customer on Shopify that went to markets and probably didn't save that much money actually overall by going to markets from us, because there isn't a overall kind of, depending on your volume and size, Zonos isn't that much more expensive than the 0.85%. And over what period of time? Lost how much?
It was within a year, but it was six figures they lost. Yes. In 6 figures in the difference between what was estimated versus the bill they got. And they didn't really pay attention to it, which I think is pretty common for most merchants. Yeah. And once they dug in and started paying attention to it, it was like, oh my heck, we are losing a lot of money on what we're collecting versus what we're getting billed. Yeah. And that's when they quickly came back to guaranteed calculations that actually take into account the real charges that are getting
and the other thing too, though, when they came back to us, is we have discounted brokerage fees. Mm-hmm. So not only did they stop losing money, which is very important, you don't want to lose money, they started saving probably $10+ a shipment, because depending on who it's shipping with, whether it's DHL, FedEx, or UPS, we're passing along discounts on that brokerage fee that you might not have negotiated, especially if you're a small shipper.
Right.
And so, at first we're kind of talking about like who's a good fit for managed markets.
And markets.
Oh, sorry. Geez. All right.
Could they make this more confusing? We need a different name.
What's the difference between Advance and Plus Shopify, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like UPS, Expedited or Express.
So
At least they don't
markets
have
or
the
managed
same
markets.
name.
So we're not going to go into managed
and both.
markets.
Okay,
We're going to
markets.
talk markets. Now, markets is kind of the do-it-yourself, a la carte, pick your
So
feature,
for
right?
sophisticated customer, probably.
Yeah, I would think so, right?
I think it's for two. I think it's for the very sophisticated customers, and the customers have no idea what in the heck they're doing, and they just want to learn the hard way. And I think that's a great way to do it.
So they can just start turning things on and go, oh,
Oh,
crap.
this is easy. Look, I just got duty and tax calculations.
Well, they don't know anything about it, and so
Right.
they think that's all there
Like I
is to
think
it.
like you either better know really what you're doing, or you're probably someone that doesn't know what you're doing and you installed it. And so it's and the thing is as you get bigger in scale and you want to use it, you do gain that control, but the cost actually gets pretty expensive. Like and the rate isn't guaranteed, and you still have all this compliance risk. And at that point, like I think there's other options out there that are cost comparative that take away a lot of the. Anyways, I don't see a lot of if you really want to manage your own tax IDs, like that might be good, right? Like you're like, I want to take on the compliance myself, and I want a whole team that does everything,
Yeah, and then you got to throw in there the bucket of customers that are selling goods that aren't a fit for managed markets. And we'll talk about that, I think, next, but managed markets won't accept any goods.
Correct.
Right?
Which
it's
is
very
so
restrictive
let's go to that. Let's go to the next extreme, right? So first extreme is Wild West a little bit. Here's a good duty and tax calculation. Good luck.
Choose your own adventure. That's fun.
You got figure out how to calculate shipping yourself, like no support, right? Which, okay. And then there's also not a lot of support with managed markets either, but it's a different service. Mm-hmm. So managed markets now, it's like, all right, no, I don't want all this headache. So can you take some of that away? Shopify, what does managed markets offer?
Yeah, so their whole thing is that they take on all that risk for you, so you don't have to worry about it.
What risk? They're not taking on the dimensional weight risk.
Exactly. Yeah, they are taking on the compliance
risk,
with,
yes.
Yeah, with those duties and taxes, and then they're actually taking title of the goods, so they're the ones kind of on the hook if there is something wrong. Again, not for shipping costs or anything like that.
So I don't have to worry about any tax IDs. What about fraud?
They do have some fraud protection, right? Do they not?
I should know the answer to this.
Yeah, I don't know if it's tied specifically to managed markets, though.
I'm
not sure.
Okay, maybe our audience can answer that in the notes.
I thought they did.
Or we'll answer it in the notes after we do this.
Okay.
Okay. I thought, you know what? I know that Global E, who powers it, does that outside of managed markets. I think they do in managed markets, but I'm not 100% sure. So, okay, so that sounds good too. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so let's say the frauds, maybe you have fraud coverage.
I think they do actually. Yeah, but it's not. It's not like all the friendly fraud type stuff.
Right.
No, but
of course not. Yeah,
typical fraud coverage.
Yes. Let's see. The duty and tax is guaranteed, right? It's guaranteed calculation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Shoppers are paying their currency. Okay. Man, this sounds great. So,
They'll do restrictions.
So it sounds to me like
manage my restrictions. Look at that. Okay.
Markets is choose your own adventure, a little Wild West,
Yeah.
which gives you a lot of control, but it puts more burden on you and more risk on you as the seller. Managed markets is more of the my way or the highway, play by my rules, right? They basically take your goods and then turn around and sell it internationally, but it takes off all the burden from you, and they manage everything for you, right?
But it is their rules because they're taking on that risk for you, so they have strict things that they'll.
Okay, so now we're getting into the accept. So they're all right. You're ruining the party, Kilie. So now we need to know all right, let's get into it. So what are some of these disadvantages then to managed markets when it sounds, on paper like it's a good fit? Because we've had a lot of customers come to us for managed markets as well as just the markets duty and tax calculation. So one that you were just saying is the restrictions, right? So I have a personal experience with our store. We have items that we have a lot of different SKUs. And so at first, when Managed Markets was turned on, right, when we bought this business. So, and a ton of the items were restricted. And they were not restricted because it's a country import restriction, which that's kind of what I would want, right? Like, if I can't sell this into Colombia or into Brazil, like restrict that item. That's not why. It has to do with payments and the risk around being a merchant of record, right? So globally, okay, and oh man, now that's another thing, right? Like the credit card statement now says globally on there, and maybe there's an asterisk for my company, but now the shopper might be slightly confused because there's a merchant of record thing going on. And now they're restricting some of my stuff that I know isn't restricted, and there's nothing I can really do about it, like to fix it. Is that it? I mean, what are some other...
Well, but you can at least ship with whoever you want to ship with, right?
Freak. You guys are ruining this party. Okay, so yeah, who do I have to ship with?
Either DHL or recently UPS, but only specific service levels as well.
Well, you ship
Okay,
with
so
whoever
I can't use my own carrier account.
Right. Yeah. You can't use your own
And so if I'm relying on my discounts for that carrier account, like I have a bundled kind of deal with, let's say, FedEx. I'm a FedEx shop. Managed Markets is like, okay, well, yeah, you're FedEx shop for domestic, but not international
Exactly.
now. Well, what if my rates are better?
You can't use them. And you can't use that volume either. That volume can't be used to get better discounts.
Okay.
It's not going through your account anymore. It's going through theirs.
All right, here, one other thing too that I think would be the most non-obvious thing that's actually a pretty big disadvantage to using Managed Markets is, and this kind of goes to like, okay, if I'm a really small merchant, I don't know if just using market duty and tax calculator is right for me, right? It's like, I need my compliance taken care of. So I go over here, but now that I'm small, like when I say small, let's say I'm doing like 600 shipments a month, even like 10 a day. Let's say I'm just doing 10 shipments a day and my average order value is $200. Chances are to Australia and New Zealand, I actually don't need to pay taxes to Australia and New Zealand because there's a $60,000 threshold of New Zealand dollars into New Zealand and a 75,000 Australian dollar threshold into Australia. So quick math here at, well, I won't go through the math, but you will save up to $5,000 a year into Australia. Well, or your shopper will, by not having to register for a tax ID. And I think that, you have a $200 shipment, tax is 10%. It's $20 a shipment.
Yeah.
So as you're trying to scale like as a small business, you try to find all these little advantages, right, against your competition. So you might have a bigger merchant you're competing with on Shopify, and they're bigger and they're going to have to charge that 10%. So they're $20 more expensive than you. You could be $20 less, but now you're $20. You're at the same level as them. Like at least get to that scale and then start charging the tax. And then New Zealand's about the same. It's about actually a little more savings, about $5,400 kind of at the peak, US dollars in savings. And so it's 15%. So now we're talking.
Well, hold on though. So we're talking about aggregating volume, right?
Yep.
So the disadvantage on the tax ID front is that now your volume's based on Managed Markets and globally. So now you're having to charge tax where you normally wouldn't have to if you're going it alone. But you do have advantages because now if you're little, you're getting the advantages of aggregated volume on your shipping cost. You may be getting better shipping rates through this program than you ever could on your own, right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, you can get discounted shipping through just Shopify itself without Managed Markets.
Yeah, and that's kind of the other point too is this isn't the only way to get advantages.
And we have programs with carriers too where we can
Absolutely.
just plop and we don't even mark up our rates. We're like, hey, we just have partnerships with, well, that is not our business. We are not in the business of selling shipping rates. And when you sign up with us, it's like, look, and those rates are more competitive. They're going to be less in, the majority of cases than what you're going to get on Managed Markets. So,
and there's a lot of resellers out there that are doing the same thing, but specifically just for shipping rates and allow you to still have control of your other aspects of your international business.
But like you said, if you're a small merchant and you're trying to get your toe into these other markets and you have that advantage of being that $20 cheaper. If you get rid of that advantage, you now have a shipping cost that's, there's the shipping plus the tax now that you wouldn't have had to pay, plus all the fees and everything. That's a big number that they're having to pay at checkout. And that can make it a lot harder for you to break into that market. Whereas if you can take advantage of that and lower that cost at the checkout, you can actually start building a following in that country.
And it's not just Australia, New Zealand. There's Singapore. I know it's a bigger threshold. So was there another one that also has a threshold that sometimes you don't need to, another jurisdiction that I feel like I'm missing?
I mean,
super high thresholds.
There's Norway, but Norway's not.
Norway's
the
different.
advantages are minimal with that one. But yeah, I mean, Australia and New Zealand are the big ones. They're bigger markets, and the difference between hitting that threshold versus not is massive, because orders under 1,000 Australian or New Zealand dollars go in duty and tax free unless you're registered. Yeah, and so that's the biggest. Those are the two biggest markets.
And that's under about $600-700 US dollars. So that's a lot of our e-commerce orders.
And so now you're paying. Did we talk about how much this costs?
Not yet.
Okay, how much does this cost? Because I look, it sounded great at first.
Yeah.
What is the cost? And we already know that some of the cost is being burdened by my shoppers, because they shouldn't have to pay another $20 or $30 a shipment. But all right, what are the actual costs though to me as a merchant? Yeah,
it's in two different parts. So there's the currency conversion, which is 2.5%, and that's paid by the shopper.
Okay, so they just mark it up. I can pretend like it didn't cost me anything, but yeah, I mean, it didn't. I mean, it was the shopper, but okay.
Yep. And then there's the 6.5% for the payment processing that includes the tax management and all of that.
All right. So 9% total. Merchant fees are in there, but yes, it's it can get super expensive, especially if you're a big shipper, because your negotiating power kind of like as you get bigger and bigger, and that cost you can go and now do something on your own and save a lot. That margin is your opportunity as a business to like keep yourself. It's just, how do you solve now we're at like this crossroads where sounded great to have a lot of control, but the problem with that is I have a lot of risk. And then it sounded great to have no risk, and then I have no control. One last thing on managed markets is the payout. How long does it take to get a payout?
It takes like a week.
It takes like a week to get your money.
Where you're floating that.
Yes. So if you're used to getting paid out with just normal Shopify, you're getting that, you're losing cash flow of almost 7 days. And if you're doing a lot of revenue, actually it doesn't matter. It's all proportionate to your business. If you're doing a fair amount of international as a percentage of your business, that's a lot of cash to lock up because they're the merchant of record, globally. So yeah, you're just, I think that that would be one that I, would be remiss to bring up, is the loss of cash flow.
Yes.
So,
but look, I want to play, like, there are some fits for managed markets, right? Like who would it be good for?
I think it's good for small shippers.
And they just have, would you say?
Well, see, that's the thing is,
there's trade-offs.
There's trade-offs, but okay, if I'm a small shipper and I can't get good rates, and I don't want to worry about the compliance, or it just depends on what trade-offs I want. But I think typically smaller, medium-sized shippers, it's a good option.
Would you say it's also just someone that is at their wits' end? They get trying to keep their head above water in general.
That's probably a better.
And they want an easy button to just say, okay, I at least want to be able to sell internationally.
Yeah,
I'll circle back around to it later.
That's the biggest thing.
Is that probably the
it's
the best
one
one?
Just doesn't want to think about it at all. Is that's geared towards.
And they're okay making, having higher costs and lower margins internationally, but at least they're going international.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I think that's not a reason just to use managed markets. It's also a reason that people use someone like an eShop World or a Globally or, that category of companies is they're like, just take it. I don't want to worry about it. And so, but when you get to the point where you do want to worry about it, you're in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people end up that way because international by default is less important to them than domestic. And so they'll focus more on domestic and just let somebody else take care of international.
Yeah. And I think that's really true. That's especially true for U.S. merchants because our market here is so big. But when you go outside of the U.S., international becomes very, very relevant.
That's true.
And is a much bigger percentage of your business.
So Aaron, you're telling me, because I want two things. I want control, and I want I want compliance kind of taken care of. But I can't have that with these two things. So we're teeing this up for you, Aaron. It's your favorite thing with it. What I want the best of these things. What do I want?
You want the best of both worlds, like Hannah Montana, right?
Yeah. So I knew you'd love that. Aaron loves the best of both worlds thing. So I want the best of both worlds.
Yep.
Now it looks like I have to go to a third party. Maybe before we talk about the Zonos app briefly, because that's kind of where we play. It's like, look, we're going to give you control. We're going to take a lot of that compliance risk away. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's other apps out there. Some that come to mind. A lot of them are private apps, right? Like where they'll, Flavor Cloud's one on the App Store, but they do the shipping for you.
They really all do shipping.
They do. That's the thing is if you want control of your shipping, you're probably just coming to Zonos at that point. Like we're pretty unique in that regard.
I think you do have some apps that focus specifically on like iOS tax remittance, and that's it. They might be able to help you with some of those low value tax, but they don't help with anything.
Yeah, you can start piecing things together. I'm getting an app to help me calculate shipping with dimensional weight. I'm getting an app to help me with iOS. Maybe there's apps for some of these other low value tax jurisdictions. I don't know.
Or for some duty and tax estimates or things like that. Like there's a lot of little a la carte apps that do certain things, or they're maybe bundled with shipping and duty and tax.
But you can download a DHL app because you're probably shipping DHL or Passport, right? But Passport does shipping, and so if that's what you want, you can go do that. But again, I think that this getting to the best of both worlds. What I want is really good shipping rates. I want control, and I want this compliance headache taken away. So I won't spend a lot of time on this, but let's just briefly go over what our app does on Shopify. Okay, if I go on the duty and tax app right now, if I go on to the Shopify App Store and I search for a duty and tax calculator, what's popping up for me?
Zonos.
And it's not, there isn't much of a contest there. Like we're going to have 10x the number of reviews.
Yeah.
At 4.9 stars. It's an extremely vetted app. The next most reviewed thing has like 10 or 15.
Yeah.
I think that's the DHL one. And as of the date of this episode, but I'm not saying it's a bad app. I'm just saying that right now on the App Store, because you can get the estimator with markets. It's like, why would I go to the App Store to get that? Because I can get the box from Managed Markets. Why would I go to the app to get another shipping company? And so it just feels like we're in that niche of going to guarantee the landed cost, handle the compliance, and let you use your shipping rates.
Manage all the tax remittance for you based on your volume and your business, and not aggregating with ours. So you get the advantages going to Australia and New Zealand.
Yep.
Right. So but the easy button as far as managing all of that, we take on all of that. Shipping rates, right?
I think that is really important, the shipping rates, because no matter if you're on Managed Markets or on Markets, you are still stuck trying to figure out how to calculate shipping accurately. And it's probably the thing that we don't emphasize enough is our ability to give you so much control over the shipping rates, and we'll cartonize the items. We'll be like, help manage the entire catalog. If this item has, this dimensions, this item has this dimensions, and there's 20 different items, and we know your box sizes. We're just like click, 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 and calculate dimension weight appropriately, increase your sales, and guess what? You didn't have to pay for another app.
Yeah.
And you have control over who you ship with too.
Yep.
That's another side of it that's, I think, really important is we're not in the shipping business. So we're not here to control that and get that margin. We're in the duty and tax shipping rate. Like, we're giving you all the tools to run your business, but it's still your business.
Yeah.
And then, for the smaller merchants that maybe need help, we have great partnerships with all of the major carriers out there, and we can help you get the rates that you need on your own. We don't do it, but we'll help introduce you to the right people that can help you.
Yeah.
To talk more about the shipping rates, like, yeah, okay, we're Zonos, we're biased, right? And it's okay to call that out here. But I don't want this to be a sales pitch because I don't think we're always like the perfect fit for everybody. But when it comes to shipping rates, that is something that you manage on your own. Like we don't help with that. So a managed market solution takes care of all of that.
If you really don't want to deal with that, we're just not the right fit.
Right. However, you're already doing it domestically.
So why do you do it domestically? Because you know how to calculate it, and you feel like you have that down, right? Like you're not worried about the risk, and you have decent rates. So if you can get decent rates, and now you just need to make sure you calculate right, like now you're back to being biased, and you can just use us.
And even in these managed markets solutions, what they bill you isn't necessarily what was calculated at checkout. It's not a guaranteed shipping rate.
Of course not.
And so even if you're calculating wrong, they're still going to, when it goes through, if your dimensional weight calculation's off or anything, you're getting billed what it is. So you're still going to have that problem with discrepancies. But yeah, that's where we try to make it as easy as possible to give you control. And sometimes if you just don't want any of that at all, that's where maybe we're not the best fit, but I think we're still a pretty easy solution.
Yeah.
And we don't leave you high and dry. I think that's where I was going before. We just, even though it's not something that we don't do, we don't just leave you high and dry with it. We actually help you get the best options out there. Even though that's not where we're making our money or anything like that. And that means that you don't have to make sure that all these other systems play nice together because we're doing it all. You know,
one other thing to talk through, just kind of circle back around on managed markets, they have their box. And they also have their box of what type of products can be sold, et cetera. Whereas you go to third-party apps, you know, like ours, for example, suddenly we can support a lot of different types of merchants that maybe don't fit in the managed markets box. So those are companies that are very good fits for Zonos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, hey, I think we summed this up great, which is, hey, if I want to use markets, either I don't know what I'm doing or I really know what I'm doing. If I want to use managed markets, I just don't want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And when I am ready to deal with it and get all the benefits of the best of both worlds, I think that Zonos until a competitor pops up that does what we do, which is hard to do. It's really hard to monetize and make a business model built around not making money on shipping. Everybody makes money on shipping. It is like how the world works. It's like every single shipping platform. Shopify makes money on shipping. Everybody, it's like, it's just an arbitrage of the carriers, shipping rates. So, anyways, that's kind of my final thoughts on the subject.
I do have one more thought on it. One more thing about Zonos is that we also predict customs behavior, which I think is very unique as well. Because you mentioned at the beginning, sometimes people will just go DDU because they'll think, well, maybe I'll just take that risk and I won't have to, pay those charges. And so they're trying to get a lower cost. But something that's unique that we do is that we predict what that customs behavior is, and we try to pass along those savings whenever that wouldn't happen. So that's a big differentiator.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
If you're trying to take advantage of DDU, that's the advantage of it, really.
Well, and the only reason we care to do that is because we have to guarantee our landed costs. We have to understand what's actually happening at the border. So that way we can predict and we don't lose money and go out of business. So we've gotten really good at it.
Yeah.
Versus most tools out there, they're just estimating duty and tax and say, I don't know what else to do. We've taken things to a whole nother level, and we've been forced to because we want to create the best experience possible for our customers and make it as simple for them as we can, which means we take on a lot of complexity and burden ourselves. And we have to become really good at things that really nobody else out there cares about because they're worried about their shipping margins and other things. So we specialize in an area that's, I don't know if anybody else does in e-commerce, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
I think you're right. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for another awesome episode. And Kilie, third time on the podcast. We're going to have a hard time not bringing her back every episode, but this was great and looking forward to some future episodes on a lot of different subjects. So this has been fun. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kilie.
Thank you.